This week on Lokar Car Show, we bring you to downtown Chattanooga, where thousands of cars are on hand just outside of Lokar Tire Museum for the Chattanooga Cruise In. I know you can't wait to see all the cars and hear the stories from the owners, but first come along with us for a tour of the Lokar Tire Museum. Lokar's car collection is one of the most amazing personal collections in the country.
Hi, I'm Corky Coker. Welcome to the Lokar Tire Chattanooga Cruise In. There are literally thousands of cars outside and tens of thousands of people outside, but right now we're in the Lokar Tire Museum and there are wonderful cars here. I'd like to show you a few of them. Come on. You know, most people when they come into my car museum, they ask, well, which one's your favorite? Well, I've got a very simple answer to that is, you know, cars are like children, and these are my children. And, you know, if you've got more than one child, which one's your favorite? Well, I like a lot of different kinds of cars. I've got early British cars. There's Jaguar E-Types, MGs, Austin Healey's, TR6s. I've got a TR250 that's a wonderful car. I like antique race cars. I have a Galvin double overhead cam 4-cylinder that will absolutely fly. It's a Model T motor, but it's a double overhead cam motor and it'll do 125 miles an hour. 56 Chevrolet, wonderful car. Now, there is a barn find. Most people know me for barn finds. There is my latest barn find in this museum today. It's a 1955 Chevrolet convertible that I bought out of a lady's garage. Her uncles bought it for her new in late '54. It was in this garage for 38 years until I yanked it out and I just basically washed it and put a new set of tires on it and it runs and drives. It needs a little bit of interior work, but I am not going to restore that car. That's a true car guy. When you know that it's too original, you can't restore it, you just have to enjoy it. But from antique race cars to hot rods to vintage brass stuff, you know, a lot of folks know me for our vintage brass cars. I have Mercer Raceabout, I have Stutz Bearcats, Crane Simplex. They're wonderful cars. So I hope you enjoy our museum. Let's take a little bit closer look. You know, most car guys get that disease from their dads. You know, I was raised around a vintage car. My favorite now, really, because of my dad, are brass cars. And most of the brass cars come with wooden wheels. This particular car is a 1916 National. It was made in Indianapolis, Indiana. In fact, in the second Indy 500 in 1912, was won by a National. This is a very rare car because it's a V12 for 1916. National decided they wanted to make some cars to compete with Packard in the Packard Twin Sixes. Now this particular car has a set of 27-inch wood wheels. Oddly enough, Lokar Tire Company makes wooden wheels. We'll show you a little bit of our shop where we make wooden wheels here in just a few minutes, but this is a beautiful original car that we restored mechanically but left the original patina of the body. It's a 1916 V12 National.
Wood spoke wheels were standard equipment in the early days of the automobile. They are beautiful on those early cars and a natural evolution of the stagecoach wheel. Lokar Tire still manufacture this type of wheel for your restoration needs. Come take a look at how they make these pieces of art.
Well, this is my 1955 Chevrolet barn find that I told you about. That's the creme de la creme for car guys. To find an original car in a garage or in a barn that has never been touched. Well, this car has been touched because it was loved, actually. The little lady that owned this car and her mom, who passed away, called this the Wee-mobile. And it is just joy. Nothing better than a 55 Chevrolet that actually runs and drives. All we did, like I said a minute ago, was wash this car. Of course, we had to put a new set of BF Goodrich wide white walls on it. put brakes on it, and it starts, runs, and drives. Look at this. Ain't that cool? Ain't nothing like a barn find.
The Chattanooga Cruise In isn't just a car show. One of the favorite events is Coker Tire's Barnyard Sale. People line up at the door to hopefully nab the tires they want at a discounted price. Come take a look at this once-a-year event during the Chattanooga Cruise In.
You know, one of the favorites in our museum is the 2013 Street Rodder Tour car. This car was built by Honest Charlie Garage here in Chattanooga for the Street Rodder Tour in 2013. My friend Jerry Dixie drove this car about 4,500 miles on the Street Rodder Tour in 2013. The interesting thing about this car is not only was it built here in Chattanooga by my crew, but the whole interior was done by my crew, but it was focused and centered around the Lokar shifter. Come check it out.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more from the Chattanooga Cruise In. The Lokar Car Show, presented by Original Parts Group, is brought to you by ARP, proudly made in the USA, the world leader in fastener technology. Original Parts Group, world-class restoration parts. Lokar, quality, plain and simple. And by National Parts Depot, make your dream happen. Take a look at this rare 1956 Chevrolet Bel Air Resto Mod. This is a four-door with an LS3 turnkey engine package from Chevrolet Performance and a lot of go-fast add-ons. The patina look was preserved by retro design, speed, and customs, and completed with Coker Tire white walls. This car is a full-on hot rod.
One of the most fun times I had in this car probably was when there's a few things that stand out in my mind, was picking the car up in Memphis, but then that next morning delivering the car to Retro Design Speed and Customs to Daniel Valjevec, the owner. I knew the car was rough. We knew that we were gonna have to do a lot of work to this car, but he kept a good poker face and said, "Oh, it's not that bad, not that bad." Just probably about 3 days later, the floors were all cut out, the whole inner fenders were cut out, the firewall was cut out, there's a lot of rust in the car, and that not bad turned into a little bit of a poker face. But we got the car done in about 7 weeks before we went to SEMA. That's a big, tall order when you're doing a full nut and bolt restoration with total stainless bolts and Fat Man fabrication front end suspension. We did everything within about 7 weeks. And I think one of the most fun times was putting this car in the show, in the Mobile One booth, not knowing how people would respond, and getting this type of response has been pretty awesome.
Billy Fairbanks built this 1931 Ford Model A Roadster to be driven. This is no trailer queen, and the only thing that may be left to do with this beauty is get a top to protect the interior.
We built this car from the ground up. Me and my dad do a lot of Model A stuff. This one was about a 4-year project. We started at 08 when we first bought the body. We bought the motor and transmission and all the running gear from a guy that took it out of a 37 Ford. And we just made it fit this Model A and just get out and ride around in her. It's a 21 stud, flathead Ford. It's got two 97 Strongbirds on it. Just a little, pretty much a stock motor. It runs pretty good. I've always been a small block Chevrolet guy, but this first flathead I've ever owned, it does really good. And so we got this one going. We decided we'd put one in that red 32. And I'm getting where I like flatheads a lot. We took it last year. First time out, we went to Nashville. Had good weather. And then we took it to Pigeon Forge. It rained the first morning. Me and a buddy of mine, I told him, I said, let's go, we're just gonna drive them. So we took off and right out in the rain, just let her go.
This 1947 Mercury is a resto mod that has been driven coast to coast. The performance is produced by a 5-liter Ford Mustang engine that's fuel injected. The reliability on cross-country road trips was the deciding factor for the engine.
We just saw it, actually. My dad saw it. He he's always wanted the Mercury. He's been asking a long time. He asked the guy a longtime friend of his that if he could buy it, and he said that would always be a cool car to build. We built it, and it's just a driver. The car has actually been on many driven dirty tours, sponsored by Posey. It's actually been from coast to coast. Many trips to California, to Paso Robles. It's been to the LA Roadster Show a few times. So it's a driven car. It's got quite a few miles on it.
Actually, it was my father-in-law's truck. It still is. It's half and half, and we just went in together and put it together ourselves. And father-in-law had cancer, and I sold my car. I had a '70 Camaro, and I sold it to fix this truck for him. So he said he'd never see it finished, and I'd like to sing that wish for him, you know, to see it finished, and that's what I did. So and this is a finished product for his dream.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more from the Chattanooga Cruising. It's time for Lokar Lowdown with Kevin Ford.
For many years, Lokar's done its best to support all the aftermarket applications that it can, especially when it comes to shifters. We're doing the next iteration of that with the new 6-speed transmission shifter. If any of you have a new car, you know that you can pull your shifter back, you put it in sport mode, you move it over, and now you're manually shifting. Well, with this new generation shifter, Lokar is now offering support for all the 6-speed and possibly 8-speed shifters to come out. It's a simple operation. It has all the standard safety features of the Lokar regular shifter, with the exception of when you pull back, you have the option of coming over and now shifting just like that. You can see that I had to fumble around with it. This is our first iteration. We've done 3, and we finally arrived at something that we feel comfortable releasing to the market. You can tell from the complexity of this that it's more than just our standard shifter that hooks up to a 350 transmission. This has electronics built into it, and again, all the safety features. Push button is still there. You come over, it's got return springs to bring you back to center, and it's got everything you need to get it hooked up to your 6-speed or 8-speed transmission. Whether that's a Ford or a Chevy, we're looking to support that. So be on the lookout for this and many other great products getting ready to release this year from Lokar.
The restoration on this Chevrolet was done 20 or 30 years ago by the man it was purchased from. Mark Childers has added an electronic ignition, exhaust, and all new springs and shocks. But why?
It's an older restoration. The paint needed to be cleaned up a little bit. I've had to do a lot of stuff underneath that you really don't see. I put electronic ignition, stuff to make it, a little bit more roadworthy. I'm getting ready to take it to California on Route 66 this summer, my wife and I, so I got to make sure it's up roadworthy. Actually, I've got a 37 Chevy. She wanted a convertible, so this ended up being her pick, so that was her decision.
The 1955 Chevrolet Nomad and matching 1963 Shasta Airfly are attention-grabbing for sure. The car was purchased almost as is, but the trailer was modified by the couple who own it to the diner style you see, with an original 1960s home-fabricated hitch by the owner's father. Bringing back great memories are the goal of this driven Nomad Airfly combo.
We get attention about everywhere. We never done it for attention. We just like old cars, and I grew up camping in a '63 Shasta Airfly, so that's why I bought the camper, because we'd go to Rod Run up in Pigeon Forge and we would camp. And but it sort of come together. Nothing was planned. We started a lot of the stuff, the vintage stuff, we've just picked up along the way, not planned to do it. But the hitch that we're pulling the camper with is actually a hitch that my uncle and my father built in the '60s, and that's what he used to pull the camper when I used to camp as a kid. It's actually made out of Chrysler torsion bars off of an old Chrysler front end torsion suspension. But as far as the attention, yeah, we can't even go into Walmart and come back out without spending about an hour in the parking lot.
We get a lot of these.
A lot of these.
On the highway.
We just enjoy showing it. We do it for the people. We're both people persons, and we like to see the smiles. I mean, we've had, I guess,
bringing back their memories.
One of the biggest ones, we took it down on Daytona Beach to take some pictures, and there was a lady that was at the booth where you go onto the beach, and she stepped out of that booth and she's seen that Nomad, and it was amazing. And it actually makes me emotional because in '55, her date picked her up for the prom in a '55 Nomad, the same color. And it just to see the look on her face and to listen to her story, and for her to go from her age back to a teenager again was worth every bit of it.
Just bought it when I went to the dealership to take a customer over there, and I just came home with it. And then we found all the rest of the Mustang Club members and really bought a car that came with a family more than anything else. 28 here today, from part of it's from Bedford County Forge, from Nashville, Smyrna, Tennessee area, Bedford County, and a whole bunch from Alabama. It's got the Boss 302 intake, and it's got a full adjustable suspension done to it, and a bunch of the Ford racing stuff on the front of it, and just dressed it up and made it look like I wanted it to look. It's not a daily driver. I drive my truck every day. It comes out on the weekends, and it goes on long cruises and tail a dragon up in East Tennessee and do a lot of that stuff. Hanging out and cruising and just filling it up with gas, rolling the windows down and just driving. Just going all over anywhere. If there's a curvy road or someplace I ain't been, we just go that way and find out what's out there.
The Lokar Car Show, presented by Original Parts Group, is brought to you by ARP, proudly made in the USA, the world leader in fastener technology. Original Parts Group, world-class restoration parts. Lokar, quality, plain and simple. And by National Parts Depot, make your dream happen. Resto Parts Restoration, powered by Original Parts Group.
Here's a great tip when installing your fully assembled door panels for your classic GM. Here's one for a 70 to 72 A body, and it's beautiful, it's correct, it's easy to install. People don't like doing the unassembled panels because they gotta glue and staple and do a bunch of stuff they're not used to. This makes it a lot easier, but there is a tip to it that helps with the install. First off, when you flip this over, there's a lot of excess vinyl on here. When you install this part with the vinyl on it, it sometimes creates lumps, it creates high points. You want to eliminate that. So you see this vinyl right here, first thing you want to do is cut it. There's a middle rail under this guide, so you don't have to worry about it. It'll guide you all the way through. I personally have installed a bunch of these myself. I try to remove as much excess vinyl as I can. Another important thing is people will call us up and they can't find the holes for their door panel clips. If you run your fingers through them, you'll feel them, okay? That's another thing you need to cut. So I'll show you an example of one right here. So you can see without installing these before, there's your hole for your door panel clip. Now that we have the vinyl trimmed on the door panel, what you want to do is line it up to your door to make sure all the holes line up for your accessories like your window cranks and armrest bases and pads. You want to use the existing window cranks and the door cranks on the door to help you with that. Even though the holes are already notched out on the door panel, you always want to make sure that is the correct location where you're going to drill your holes. The easiest way to do is you're going to impress the notch up against the window crank handle, as you can see right there, and that's where you would get your knife or your razor blade and mark it with a little X. Okay? Once you do that across with the other notch, which you see right here, you take the door panel back off and you start cutting all your holes for your accessories. That'll line up all your window cranks and your armrest bases, and it'll assure that you have a proper installation. Here we have a previous car we finished the exact same job on. We have everything assembled, the armrest bases and pads, the door handles, the window cranks, and the vent window cranks. If you follow the steps I told you, we'll assure that your car will look just as good as this one.
This 1957 is an old family friend. Chet Cheddar, the original owner, says his mother put most of the miles on it, but the restoration was all him. The love for automobiles must have been passed down to him from somebody.
The car was purchased for me by my father back in July of 1957. So it's an old family friend. And anyway, I was overseas for many years. The car was driven for many years. Most of the miles were actually put on by my mother. And I then returned to the USA and picked the car up and started to drive it and discovered that it needed some additional TLC. And at that time I looked at having the restoration done on it, did some inquiry, and found somebody that was going to be able to do the entire job, which at that time I looked at as being a frame-off restoration, but without really realizing the total number of nuts, bolts, and pieces that were going to be found in doing that job. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. It started in July of 2006, was finished in July of 2013. So it took a little while, some scurrying about for a number of different things in the process, but one of the things that I wanted was to properly have the question answered, was I interested in a trailer queen or a road car? And the car has always been driven, so one of the things I wanted to make sure was that it was rebuilt so that I could drive it on the road anywhere, anytime, as I would like to do. And it's been rebuilt that way.
Well, as you can see, it's a gorgeous day here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You know, the God always shines down on Coker Tire and the sun is out, and it's just a great event. There's about 15,000 of our close and personal friends here. So, you know, next year, if you didn't make it this year, come out next year. Be here on the first Saturday of April. Come down to Coker Tire. See you then.
We are headed west next week on Lokar Car Show. We travel to Southern California to bring you the Seal Beach Classic Car Show.